So follow through is the process of letting the bullet escape the rifle and keeping the rifle in one position and not adding any variables to it, but also staying in the scope so we can see where our bullet hit or where it missed, right? Common errors in follow through are I take my shot, and as soon as I take my shot, I rip my finger off the trigger. That was very exaggerated, but let's just say I take my shot and I immediately pull my finger off. That's not great follow through, right? Because we're adding movement to the gun. Bad follow through can also look like I take my shot. Hey, did you see if I hit that? I just took my head off the gun, asking my spotter if he's seen if I hit it, right? So now we don't know where our bullet went. So we talked about consistency earlier. The whole goal with follow through is to have consistency. And if we take our head off of the gun every single time, we're never going to have consistency. So we got to keep our head on the gun. Once we take that shot, bang. All right, I just seen I missed 2 mils left. Now I can run that gun, slight, 2 mils right, boom, impact. If I break my position, my next shot is not going to be consistent. Everything in long range is consistency, 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 and that allows for precision. Having bad follow through is the art of, sure, you got a good first shot, but how do we repeat that every single time? I promise you at our courses, one of our constant things that we say is keep your head on the gun. Because a lot of people are down here on their cheek weld and then they pop their head up to adjust their turrets on their optic or do whatever. And, you know, in the Marine Corps, they used to say, like, you keep taking your head off your gun, we're just going to tape it to the gun. And I've never actually had to tape anyone's head to the gun, but usually when you say that and you scare someone enough, it kind of teaches them a lesson. They'll keep their head on the gun. That's the biggest issue though. So keep your head on the gun, run your bolt, not your mouth. Next, we're going to talk about aiming techniques. So first off, we're going to talk about the aiming process. How do we actually aim our gun efficiently? Okay, so we're going to start this by aligning the rifle with our target to ensure that we minimize time searching for the target. Here's an example. So we got a shooter here on some trees that have fallen down, and he's got a target up on this hilltop over here. So he's looking at this target, and what I want you to notice is his head placement on the gun. Notice that his face is not on his cheek piece yet. He's looking over his scope, and he's drawing a line to his target, right? So he's doing those things, that way when he drops down in his scope, the target is in his scope, and he's not looking around on the side of the mountain for 20 minutes trying to find the target, right? So he's doing the little things at a time in a step-by-step process to minimize that time searching for the target. I'm gonna quickly demo what that would look like. So I'm gonna start with the rifle up and in my hand with my bag. If I had a target directly in front of me on the same elevation height as me, I would start by looking at the target, getting my gun in front of me, and what I like to do is look at the target and connect a line with my muzzle and the target. So eye, muzzle, target. And I'll lay my rifle down and I'll ensure that my muzzle and my target and my eye are making a straight line. From here, push this up a little bit. From here, once I've done eye, muzzle, target, I'll get my bag in here. And now I'm gonna start dropping down on the gun, that push-up position, talked about earlier. Start thinking about my 7 factors all shooting positions, my grip, placement of the non-shooting hand, my elbows, and my legs, spot stock weld, and now I can no longer see my muzzle. It's blocked out by the front of my scope. So I can no longer do eye, muzzle, target, but what I can do is use the top of my elevation turret. So now I'm looking at my scope and I'm connecting a line. Eye, turret, target. That way when I drop down into my scope, I can find that target. It's right there. I'm not moving the gun, I'm just dropping straight down into it. Boom. Biggest mistake people will make is having their gun on high power magnification when they do this. Right now I'm on 7 power. Most times I'll do this at about 8 to 10 power, and I know that that's 10 power right there with my throw lever straight up. But I got low power, I find the target, confirm it, zoom in if I need to, adjust things, and then I take my shot. When we start with our rifle zoomed in all the way, we're looking through a straw. We're trying to find a target in the middle of a forested area, which is very similar to trying to find a needle in a haystack, if you get what I'm saying. So don't start this process zoomed in all the way. Zoom out, eye muzzle target, eye turret target, eye reticle target. Once you find it and you need to zoom in, then you can zoom in. And then you start your shooting process. Okay? Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is things that are happening inside of the scope with your reticle. So we want to make sure that when we're looking through the optic, we see the reticle clearly. And to do that, we got to talk about eye relief, which we'll get to in a few slides. But essentially, we want our reticle, we want our eye directly behind the optical axis or the center line of the scope. And then we got to get sight picture. Once we have a good sight alignment and our eye is squared up in the optic, then we got to get the target squared up inside of the optic. Meaning if the target is 2 mils wide, then my center reticle on the target should have a mil left and a mil right of the target. If it's 4 mils high, then I should see 2 mils from center to the top of the head and 2 mils from center to the bottom of the target. That's just getting it all squared up. Okay? As soon as my clicker will start working again. Okay, now we're going to get a lot deeper into the scope. So as we just mentioned, eye relief. Eye relief is one of the most crucial aspects of shooting with an optic. Whether it be a carbine with a low power variable optic or LPVO such as a 1 to 6 power or 1 to 8, or a precision rifle running, in this case, a 4.5 by 27 power optic. So with eye relief, the whole goal is to ensure that the center of your eye is centered with the optical axis of the scope, which means your eye is centered in the center of the scope. It's that simple. When our eye is not centered with the center of the scope, what happens is we perceive the reticle to be somewhere that it's actually not. Meaning if you think the reticle is right there, but your eye is not centered in the scope, it might actually be somewhere slightly left, right, up, or down from that area. So eye relief helps us fix that. Eye relief is the distance away from the objective or the ocular lens back here. How far back we got to be to get a good field of view and at the same time being centered on the optical axis. And in most scopes, it's going to be around about 3.2 to 3.4 inches back, meaning my eye is roughly right here to get good eye relief. Common theory out there is scope shadow is bad. Don't shoot with scope shadow. Like we see in this picture here, scope shadow is bad. Well, I'm here to tell you that if you don't have any scope shadow, you won't know if your eye is squared up behind the optical axis. You have to have some scope shadow to see if your eye is squared up behind the optic. So in this image, you can see a little bit of scope shadow on the bottom and the left side, but there's really not any on the right. So if this is the case, your reticle is going to be slightly off where you assume it will be. And if my scope shadow is bottom left, that means my round is going to impact a little bit high and right. Your rounds are always going to impact in the opposite direction of your scope shadow. And the more scope shadow you have, the more dramatic that gets. So in this one, we have a lot of scope shadow up in the top left. and none in the bottom right, but that's where we see our picture. If we took a shot right now, that scope shadow is high and left, so our bullet's going to impact low and right. The more scope shadow, the more dramatic. The further the range, the more dramatic. So what we want to do is get that scope shadow as equal as possible. Again, another example of scope shadow on the left side, so our bullet's going to impact opposite of that. We want our scope shadow to be equal.